All right, welcome back to another Fabric Tip Friday. I'm going to try to do this one by myself. I've got a little tripod set up here so I can put it in it, so I have both hands to do stuff. But what we're going to talk about is putting tapes around the trailing edge. As we know, we want to put a piece of reinforcement tape anywhere fabric goes from a hard point out to an open bay, where that little bit of movement is, just a little bit of reinforcement. You could, in this situation, I've did it before, mark a 2-inch and put a 2-inch here. You put your 2 coats of thin down, put your coat of thin, put your tape in it, put a coat over, another one on top, just like you do normal tapes and everything. Your pinked edge would be right here at the trailing edge, and that'd be totally fine. When you put 2 to 3 coats of primer and sand it, you really won't never see that. That is probably the fastest way, because you just lay a 2-inch, do it to the other side. This one I'm going to wrap a 4-inch. Now I'm going to try to do this with one hand to start out. What you have the problem is when you try to wrap around, most people want to glue, and then they get a hold here and they wrap around here, and the first thing I want to do is start putting it down. They've already got their base glue, and in this situation I would probably go extra base. I might put 3 good bases down, and always remember to put a base on the trailing edge, that side, and on the end. You want a lot of base down to do what we're going to do here. But most people will have a tendency to want to just wet that down and wet through it and come around here and wet through it. All right, if they wetted this through, I can do this. This is an exaggerated. See that hollow spot? That's exaggerated. It wouldn't be that much. But if you pulled it, or you say, well, I'm going to pull it around and I'm going to do a good job and not have a hollow spot. By the time you get it wet, you still could have a hollow spot along that trailing edge. And then later on, when you put primer on, it could cause wrinkles and different things. So what I do is, like I said, forgive me, using my one hand here. I take, I'm going to use a 4-inch piece going around this. Mark you a piece exactly in the middle. Lay it on the trailing edge and lap it around, and that'll give you a mark, 2 or 3 spots down through, and put your pencil mark. Put all your base glue down. At that point, we have a tendency to, I'm going to go ahead and prop this up 2 cans and see if this will work. At that point, some people have a tendency to say, well, I'm going to cut my piece of tape, I'm going to lay it perfectly up here, and I'm going to just wet this backbone. Well, what happens, like I've mentioned before, when you go trying to wet this through the backbone right here, and it's only stuck on the, let's just use this as an example, and you wetted it right there, you're going to get thin glue out on this. Well, unless you're going right down with it, you're sealing the weave, so that when you come back after it dries a little bit and come down and try to wet it through, you will not wet that through once you put any thin glue out on that edge. Now, if you are very, very, very careful and can make an edge of a brush, just barely get that backbone, that's fine. But if anybody knows me, I'm not going to sit around here and play with this thing all day and trying to, just wet that backbone. I'm going to show one way that I do it. Going back here, laying this down. What I will do is lay it down, get everything, my base coats and everything down, get my tape cut. And then when I lay my tape up here out of the way, and I'll come down through here pretty fast with a wet coat. Now this is a pretty long, if it's very hot weather, you probably can't do it. You probably have to do it half of it and then reach under and do the other half. But I'll go through and wet that, and just as soon as I'm done, I've got my tape laying right up here. I'll pull it off on my hand, and I'll lay it in the very end, and I'll pull about 2 foot and line it about where I want it, lay it down, and then I'll take my hand and work that end. And you don't want to pull it real tight, because what you'll do is you'll pull it real tight where it has to come up and over these little reinforcements. If you pull it really tight, it'll pull and bridge across that, and you can't hardly get it stuck down. So just pull it tight enough to be straight. And that's why I don't like wetting it through first. I like laying it in the wet, and that way you got a dry side. Take your hand, work it down, and I'll go all the way down. Hadn't put any on the top yet. Then I will lay something like this under. I'm just doing like an aileron. I lay something to get this up level so it ain't leaning one way or the other. Then I'll come in with this one's already been dried. I'll come in right after I've wiped this out with a thin glue, and I will wet a top coat of thin glue. But I will work it right up to this. You'll have a habit of wanting to go fast, and it's gonna be just what I said before. You get thin glue running down on this, you've sealed that weave, and when you try to go around, you can't wet it through. So I will wet this right up to that edge. Then I may come back and just take my finger and just wet a little bit and just kind of just get it wet right up to that edge. This one is dried for about 30 minutes. It you know, probably a little faster than that'll be fine. So at this point, I've got this one dry. Try to prop this up again, see if it'll do what I want to do. Let me put it in this tripod here and see if it'll show what I want to do. I'll be right in here. All right. What I do at this point, like you've seen in one of the other videos, a couple of the others, where I talk about, you know, your tendencies want to pull this around and start gluing. You see what it's trying to do. And if you get too much glue, too much wet, it ain't going to stick real good. If you could just barely put some glue under here and pull it down, that would be fine. But what I normally do is first, I go along, and I'm pulling pretty tight this way, and I'll set it about 300. And what I'm doing is activating that glue, and I'm kind of what I call breaking that backbone. This is heavier tapes. I'm going along and locking that down. But remember, I'm pulling it, keeping that void out of that trailing edge. And I work my way down. And I'm gonna probably go on down this, I'm gonna stop the film and let my nephew edit it back together. But what I'll do is I'll go all the way down that, but then I'll come back. You know, I've got it kind of laying almost down. I don't want to get up here and shrink it or anything, but I'll maybe go down the back, and then I'll come just a little bit of an angle and kind of bringing it on around. Ideally, we're wanting to bring it all the way around, but I'm afraid if I get too far around here, I'm going to shrink this. But I'll go back down it, and I'm going to stop the video and do this. But I kind of bring it down about like that. That's about as far as I want to go. I can see it kind of raising up. So I've got it almost laid down. It's glued only by heat of the iron. It's not, you know, it's just stuck. And that's all we're worried about right now, because we'll come back and wet it through. So I'll go all the way down that first pass and then come back at about that angle, getting it kind of laid down pretty close. All right, got a different angle here, and let's see where I'm gonna start about. I'm looking at the camera here in the tripod. I'll start about right here. What I like to do, instead of starting at one end and working that way, sometimes you'll work up a little bit of a wrinkle or something. Shouldn't have, everything should be down level. But what I'll do is take some thin glue. Now at this point you can do two things. You can raise it up, wet under it, wet it, lay it in with your hand. That would be one way to do it, would work, you know, very well. If you do that, then you want to reach all the way up in there and pretty fast, do about 2 foot at a time, not get too much in it. If you get a lot of wet glue in there, then it's just sloppy and it don't want to stick. Another way at this point, and this is going to be where, because you didn't get any glue on all of this, we're going to wet it through. Still kind of raised up, and I don't want to wet the whole thing, because then if I stick it out here, see, I've still got that little raised up. So I will probably, for about 6 inches back here at the back, just wet it a little bit and take my finger, kind of rub it in. And as I'm rubbing it in, I'm kind of taking notice to kind of do this kind of an action. And then come on out a little bit more on it. And as you stick out here, that's helping pull that tight and keep that tight. But the first part is up here. I'll work my way down. Let me see if I'm still in the, I'm just about out of it. Turn it here. And I'll do about the first 1/2 inch and just wet a little bit. Do the edge. And, you know, and if you have a, you know, it ain't gonna be much under it soaked through, but just the right amount of dry, and it sticks pretty quick. And then work my way up and then bring it right up to the tips. So if you put 3 coats down, That's number 4 coat. You're gonna come back with one more, possibly 2. The extra one on top fills that weave for pinholing when you're doing the priming. But once I've made it, say 2 foot, then I come back and I just do a quick wipe just so it's lubricated on top and wet. And I'll look down through it and I'll rub them and see I'm bringing a little hollow spot there up. So I'll just kind of work that out. You don't want to get too far ahead or you'll get to the point that you can't, get rid of a wrinkle. So we're wanting to kind of work it this way and that way. And then once I'm done, I will come back, put one more coat on, and I'll physically look for any hollow spots, take my finger and rub them down. And at this point, if you end up getting it dry and there is a little hollow spot, don't recommend this on a lot of tapes, but if you had a little dime size hollow spot right there and you're already glued all the way around, I would say take an iron at about 275, just kind of massage that a little bit to make it kind of shrink that little bit of a bubble down and stick, and then come back with some thin. Take your finger and try to keep working it to where to go through. That's just the way I can put them on if I'm wrapping it around. Customer likes it when he's paying by the hour, and I want to try to find the fastest way possible. That's just one way I've did it, and I wanted to show that.